I recently spent 6 hours watching this 90-minute camera tutorial. Let me explain. I recently upgraded from my iPhone 11 to a new and better camera to improve my quality on my YouTube videos. And let me tell you, what makes this camera so much better is that... Yeah. Did someone just erase my memory? Because I don't remember anything from the tutorial. Well, I guess I have to rewatch the tutorial to answer the question of why is this camera so much better than just an iPhone, other than the improvement in quality. So I sat down, took up the video again, put in the batteries and the SD card, and I was ready to say, okay, let's go. I turned on the camera and took my first video and photos.
Yo, Oliver, very handsome.
So watching the tutorial, I had to create a scene to practice on. I first off took some photos and experimented with this zoom, where you can scroll on the actual lens of the camera. And I actually learned how to take a photo properly. To take a photo, you first set focus by pressing the bottom halfway. And then you take the photo by pressing it down the whole freaking way. And this setting here is basically the same as the iPhone. And when you take a panorama, this is how the camera sounds like. Now I wanted to take a macro photo of this small Rubik's Cube on top of this normal Rubik's Cube. To do this, I went into the camera and picked the macro setting. So I tried to take a bunch of photos, but I couldn't actually get the Rubik's Cube in focus. Then I found this setting called manual focus, where I set the focus with the scroll wheel on the lens to control the desired focus. And after some tries, I actually got it. You know how in movies where they set a focus on one subject and then they transition to focus on another subject? I always wonder how that works, but with this camera you can basically do this by pressing on the screen and you will set another focus point. So here I have the anime girl, and then all of a sudden I focus on the little book, I focus on the little book, and then I go back. And then there was an option I could change this focus, but I can make the transition slower and not that abrupt. Here's also a cool feature. You can box in your focus point, so when I take out the anime girl from the box, she's out of focus. But as soon as I put her in the box, she's in focus. I will use this if there's something in the foreground and that I don't want in the frame, then I can just move the focus point out from that. Then you have this wheel that turns up and down the brightness of the image, which is called exposure. And it's not the same as ISO, I learned. This is kind of hard to understand. I don't really understand it myself. If you want to film in a dark environment, you can make the camera more sensitive to light by turning up the ISO. Doing this comes with a cost. You'll get noise in your frame. So you want to just have the perfect balance of turning up the light just so slightly and also not get the noise in the frame. Then I learned about white balance. Basically, you make the whites in the video instead of a white being like a cool blue or a warm yellow. And this option here is pretty cool actually. You can turn your anime girl or whatever you want into paintings. But in order to test this next option, I have to go outside. So I went outside and just sat down like I'm gonna go shoot with camera. And then load a gun.
3, 2, 1, fire.
So the setting I'm trying out here is called metering mode, which basically makes something that is poorly lit into something that looks pretty okay. So I went from this to this. I could definitely sell some anime figures with this. And then you had a bunch of settings, turning your video into different colors. And basically, the last part of the tutorial, I just learned a bunch of settings. So now, we gotta test the cameras. So I set up this scene with a tomato, a banana, and this chocolate paper. The first test is basically gonna be me filming these objects, going around, and just testing the quality. So here goes nothing. Okay, that's probably the worst test I could do. The next test is gonna be me pouring the coffee in a cup to just see how they both perform in moving objects or moving liquid. I don't know why I feel this would be a good test, but this next test is actually a good test.
Are you sure about that?
So trust me on this. I'm gonna test the portraits of these two cameras. The iPhone is not that bad here, but the new camera looks more buttery smooth. But for the final test, I'm gonna test how good they are at taking macro photos. So I found this rose in my garden, and of course we're gonna test on this Rubik's Cube. This is how it looks with the iPhone. But then, look at this though, with the new camera. What's up? What's up? Beautiful. So to answer this question in the beginning of the video,
What's the actual difference more than the obvious quality improvement?
I basically think of the two cameras as two different tools. The first tool is a basic tool that's easy to use but has its limits. Then you have a more advanced tool that you can do even more, but there is so much more to learn that it can be overwhelming. But if you master it, you can get some amazing looking photos and movies and films and everything, you know. So if you want to see more, click this video right now. Right now!